Oh, good morning. If you haven't already done so, please let me know that you are present in the chat. All right, guys. Oh, no, I have not. I was actually using my time yesterday to try and mark your assignments from the first block, from the first, excuse me, from the first unit. Let me look into that today while you guys are working. Maybe I'll put together a short, like a 5-marker little practice quiz with some questions about meiosis. That's actually, I'll put that on my to-do list. Excuse me, on my to-do list here. Oh, Ryan, I gotcha. Okay, let's talk about what we're up to today. Remember that we have. Wait, I think today's the last day of the unit, right? Yes. So today is the last day of the unit. When you are done, Grace, can you be a little bit more specific about what your problem was? When you say it wouldn't let you, were you not able to, I'm assuming it's a Google Doc. Were you not able to like see a way to submit a Google Doc? Was that the problem? Day 10 is posted in the next unit. Zoe. Give me 1 sec. I will get to your question. Check with me. I have a feeling that probably wasn't the error message in its totality. Do you know what the exact wording was of the error message? Let's troubleshoot this once we're working independently, okay, Grace? I want to work this out with you, but I gotta get started here. I gotta get people going. So we'll get stuff going, and then we'll put something in the chat, and we'll try and figure out your submission problems. I'm sure we can get it working. Zoe, to answer your question, tomorrow we're beginning a new unit. It should be visible. It says that day 10 is visible here under the next unit. And the next unit is animal structure and function. It's basically like an animal anatomy, physiology unit, where we're going to discuss 3 body systems in detail and talk a little bit about body system interaction. It's sort of like what you did towards the end of grade 10 biology when you just started getting into organ systems, but we're just going to discuss them in quite a bit more detail. So that's where we're headed tomorrow. We're just going to start that unit. You'll notice that I've posted the assignments for the second block, or not for the second block, for the for that unit, but obviously you won't be starting any of them or doing any of them yet, because we will just be starting it for 1 day, and then you guys are going to be moving to your other class. So tomorrow is the last day that you're with me, and then on and then on Thursday you're going to be in your other class. So whatever that happens to be, and then in 10 days you'll be back here again. So that's how it's going to work. You're probably used to that system by now. If you're not sure of the exact timing, the schedule is posted under the introduction, on the introduction page, Quadmester 4 calendar right there. You can take a look, but my guess is that we are still going to be working from home when I see you again. I have a very strong suspicion. So with regards to the timelines for when things are due at the end of this unit, your genetics processes quiz, which is the quiz for this unit, will be available today. In fact, it's available right now. You shouldn't do it until you're done the content for today, obviously. And you don't have to do it today. So my recommendation is that you write it during Learning Block 3 today, because I can provide you support while you're writing it. If you have a question about particular quiz question, excuse me, jeez. If you have a question about a particular quiz question, I can answer it, or because I'll just be there. I'll be like ready to go. Once school ends, I normally do a switch with my wife, who is looking after both of our kids all day. So I take the baby and my 5-year-old, and my wife takes a nap. My wife gets to take a break for a bit. So I do answer questions via email, and I appreciate that people are emailing me their concerns with during reasonable hours. I do my best to get back to you on those, but I'm not like working during that time always. So just be patient. If you're looking for like a quick turnaround on questions, you got to use Learning Block 3. That's the purpose of it. I am here. I'm ready to go during Learning Block 3. Or I mean anytime during the day, but for the quizzes, it's best to do it during Learning Block 3. That being said, I would prefer if you completed it by the end of the day tomorrow. So by midnight tomorrow. Tomorrow, remember, is the last day that I'm going to see you. And because the reason for that is because after that time, I will have a different class and I will be supporting them. And so I don't necessarily have a whole lot of time to be answering your questions about the quiz, following up with you about, hey, can you please do this quiz? And so at that point, we're getting into this area where I'm going to lose track of you. You're not in my class technically at that time. And it's not that you can't email me, you can, but just keep in mind that I'm getting lots of emails from my other class at that time, and so then yours is kind of getting pushed to the bottom of the pile because you're not currently in my class. So please do your best to complete the quiz by midnight tomorrow. If you need more time, send me an email as usual, and we'll work out an extension. Okay, but don't just put it to the side and say, oh, I'll get to that eventually, because from my experience, you won't, or you'll get to it later at a time when you have 5 other things to do, and it's going to be extremely stressful for you. So it compounds your stress to do that. So, and I've seen it happen many times already. So please don't do that. You also have your vocabulary list, which, I mean, it essentially should be complete at the end of today. We will be through all the vocabulary. You might even have 30 words already. That this is a very vocabulary-rich unit. But by the end of today, you probably will be done. Submit it when you're done. Okay? So, again, midnight tomorrow would be the latest that you should hand that in. But you should be done at the end of today, because the idea is that you're adding to it as you go. Okay, so you got your quiz, you've got that, and then the last component is the Meiosis Live project, which we went over yesterday. And the second half of today is completely devoted to that. You can work on that. And again, I would prefer if that came into me by midnight tomorrow. And I realize that these things are all coming at the same date, but try and keep in mind that the vocabulary list is meant to be completed as you go. So it's not meant to be something that is being completed on the last day. It should be done already on the last day when you're done. So that doesn't really matter that date coincides with another due date. The quiz can only be completed at the end of the unit after you've done all the content. So there's nowhere else for me to make that do. And the project, I'm giving you the maximum amount of time I can give you, but yet not have it interfere with the other stuff in the unit. So anyway, Kim, you can use organelles, but I really don't think that organelles are core vocabulary for this unit. Maybe if you're adding something in terms of your understanding about a particular organelle, you want to talk in more depth about ribosomes, you want to talk in more depth about whatever, something that's specific to transcription and translation, molecular genetics, sure, then maybe add that in. But I wouldn't put things like endoplasmic reticulum or something like that, and unless you are specifically talking about how it relates to transcription and translation. Remember that when your vocabulary list is not meant to be a general list of terms, it's meant to be, here is the core vocabulary from this unit, and here's my understanding of that vocabulary, and here is how it relates to the unit. So as I'm marking your vocabulary lists from the last unit, I'm coming across a lot of examples of very basic definitions, and keep in mind that you're supposed to use some detail here to explain what these concepts are, and there are very few examples or no examples being presented, and you need to include examples, and very, very few connections to how this is important to this particular unit. Again, that's a requirement for your definitions. You need to explain how the term is connected to the unit. So please keep that in mind. I have a feeling a lot of people are going to get back their marks from the first vocabulary list. They're going to be disappointed because they're not including the things that I'm asking you to include in a definition. So have an extra look at what you actually need to include in a definition in your vocabulary list before you submit the second one. I don't want you to be disappointed, but like it's very clearly outlined there what you need to include. You need to explain how the term is connected to this unit. So, and if you don't do that, that's a key part of the term that's missing. So anyway, just as a heads up to you. So a number of people are not doing that. I think you're going to be very disappointed if you're not doing that. So, okay, let me go through this again. So we've got quiz today during learning block 3. By tomorrow, end of the day is fine. We've got vocabulary list due tomorrow midnight. We've got Meiosis live presentation due tomorrow midnight. Okay, it's usually the end of the quad, or end of the unit where all of the things come due. It's like that for every unit. If you can't get something in by that deadline, please let me know, and we will work something out. People have already been doing that with their assignments from from the first unit, which I really appreciate. And it's not a big deal at all for anyone who's dealt with me already. It's not a big deal. You're proposing an alternative that's reasonable. As long as you're abiding by the alternative deadline that you're proposing, we don't have a problem. Okay? So please just let me know. The last component here, as we are about to leave for our other class, and this, I know this sounds weird, but by the time you come back again in 10 days, that's actually midterm, which is crazy. So we're at midterm for the course. So I'm going to get you to hand in, you'll see it right here on the side, it says midterm homework questions portfolio. You need to hand in your homework question documents for the first 2 units once you're done. Okay, so you attach those there and you submit. Please do that as soon as you're done the questions for today. Attach both of your documents, both for this unit and for the other unit. And this is so that I can evaluate your learning skills for your midterm report. So just keep that in mind. If you don't hand in your homework questions documents, I have no evidence of you doing any work other than your assignments. But like the day-to-day work of the course, which normally I could just see you doing in the classroom, I have no clue whether or not you're actually doing any of that stuff. And so, yeah, obviously when I give you your midterm reports, it reflects that. It means it says, essentially, I have never seen you do work before. So that's not a great place to be. So just make sure that you get that in. I know most of you have been working very hard, and you may as well get credit for all of that. So anyway, there's the midterm homework questions portfolio. That should come in preferably at the end of today, assuming that you're done your homework questions. I'm not marking the questions for correctness, although I do look to see that you're actually completely answering the questions in them, and not just writing one-word answers. You should be using full sentences where applicable. If it's a problem, you're explaining your solution. You know, the normal way that you would do homework. Okay, so anyway, those are the 4 things for this unit. There's one extra thing. Normally there's 3 per unit, but there's 4 for this one because of the homework questions portfolio. But it's not extra. It's just something that you've already done, but you just need to hand it in to me. If you haven't done it, let's just say like you actually don't do homework. You don't do it. And then, you know, that might be you. Then you guys, you got to hand in a blank document. You have to hand something in. Don't hand in nothing. Handing in nothing is an incomplete. That is, as far as I'm concerned, I have no evidence that you're even participating in this class at all. And that's highly problematic, okay? I got to take that up with your guidance counselor, talk to your VP. We got to get you back on board with this course and heading towards a credit. And you're definitely not doing that if you're not completing anything. At the very least, if you've only done a couple questions homework and you haven't done the whole thing, just hand in the document with what you have so I know that there's some participation happening on your part, okay? Not no participation. So anyway, just let me know how you're doing. I'm not trying to give people a hard time here, but I do need to have some method to keep track of what you guys are doing. You know, I'm required to report on it. So, and this is kind of a weird zone here where I just have no contact with you other than occasionally via email maybe, or I don't know. It's kind of weird, but Okay, I'm going to stop talking about that. So anyway, that's what's coming due. Let's talk about what we're up to today. So yesterday, we were just getting towards the end of the unit. The last sort of topic before we get into genetic illnesses, which is really the last topic in genetics, I wanted to talk about one more strategy for inheritance. So we had been talking about just basic complete dominance. That's when you have a dominant and a recessive, and then in the phenotype, you only show the dominant or you only show the recessive. And there is no in between. It's just dominant or recessive. That's called complete dominance. So we talked about complete dominance. Then we talked about two alternatives to complete dominance. One was incomplete dominance, where you get a middle ground in between the two options. So you either have one trait, one allele, you have the other allele, or you have the middle allele that's like a combo of the other two, some kind of middle ground of the other two. That's incomplete dominance. Or you have codominance, where you show both at the same time. And the reason you show both at the same time is usually because some cells show one allele and some cells show the other allele. And what that ends up looking like on an organism is both alleles being expressed at the same time. So it's not a third option that's different. It's both of the original alleles being expressed simultaneously. Okay? So we've got complete dominance, incomplete dominance, and codominance. The last type of inheritance pattern that I'm going to get you to think about is the idea of multiple alleles. So far, we've only ever discussed this idea that you have either one allele or the other allele, or, I mean, in the case of incomplete and codominance, both alleles at the same time or both alleles together. But what happens if there's more than two alleles? So that's what we're going to talk about right now. So this is the idea that there is 3 or 4 alleles or 5 alleles. Remember, alleles are versions of a gene, and some traits have multiple alleles, versions, there are more than 2 versions of an allele. So one place where we see this often, and this in the textbook, this is actually the only thing, the only example that it gives for multiple alleles. Obviously, there's lots of traits that have multiple alleles, but blood type is one of the really easy to describe ones. It's used very commonly. Like, people are familiar with the idea of blood types, and so it's used primarily as the only example here of multiple alleles. But keep in mind that it obviously applies to more than one trait. So we're gonna talk about blood types. I'm gonna keep this conversation just like the textbook, pretty locked into just blood types, since the idea of blood types is fairly complicated. So to get you started, I'm going to get you to watch this little video here on what are the different blood types, okay, and why you should care. Like, who cares what the different blood types are? The video is going to go into why you should know your own blood type and why it's important when you go to the hospital to know what your blood type is. Okay, so that's the first part. It's a little, and it's going to describe on a molecular level too what it means to have a different blood type. And then the second part here is a pre-recorded lesson. So I pre-recorded this one because I need a little bit of time actually to mark your projects. So I'm gonna get into that. And actually, Kim, you gave me a good suggestion here to create a little meiosis quiz, which I'll probably post on day 6 or 7 or wherever we did meiosis. So I'm gonna do that as well. But anyway, I got to get into marking. I got to start getting you some stuff back so you know how you're doing. So I'm gonna work on that while you're doing this lesson. And then there are some analysis questions that go along with that. So it's page 196, 6 to 9. This goes in your homework document. And then complete practice problems 2 to 5 in your course notes. So those are the ones that are the blood type questions that are in the actual course notes themselves. It's after the blood type section, obviously. And then there's a little practice quiz to do at the end. Okay? So that's the first thing that you're going to do. The second thing that you're going to do is you're going to take up... Oh, no, I'm going to do that with you. At the beginning of learning block 2, we're going to take up any multiple allele problems that you had any problems with. Then you are going to read page 204 to 207 in your textbook. By the way, this is all on page 14 in the notes package. It's the part that's on genetic disorders, so I can show you what it looks like. It's a little confusing because if you printed off the whole booklet, you won't see it, or it won't be page 14. But I'm talking about, not that. Not that. There we go. Okay, so here's the blood type stuff. So this is what you're going to be doing today. That's the first part, blood type stuff. And here are the questions that you're going to answer. I can go through any of those solutions with you after the break. We're going to skip pedigrees. So this is actually the section after blood typing. We're going to completely skip pedigrees. Normally we spend a little bit of time talking about pedigrees. A pedigree is just a chart that explains inheritance patterns. It's not strictly part of the curriculum, but we do it sort of like as a little side thing to help sort of understand how things are passed on from generation to generation, but we're out of time. So we're not going to do that. We're going to completely skip that. All the questions associated with pedigrees. You already did the codominance and multiple alleles one. So sex-linked inheritance, got to skip it. No time. So those are just traits that are inherited on your sex chromosomes. Again, not particularly important. You guys get, if you're okay with the inheritance patterns we've already talked about, you're good. Any genetics course that you're ever going to take in university, the only understanding you need is the basic understanding that you will have already gotten from discussing complete, incomplete, and codominance. That's totally satisfactory. Okay, give me one second, Sydney. I can answer that question for you as well. Okay, so you can skip past this. So here we go. Here's page 14. And this is the genetic disorders section. Okay, so this is the part that you're going to be doing after the blood type part. You're going to be reading page 204 to 207 in your textbook. And then there are some questions on genetic disorders that you're going to complete. They're also summarized on here. So they are page 207, numbers 1 to 5. So you should read that little section at the top on genetic disorders in your textbook as well. So it goes along with this. So you're reading this. This is sort of like an intro to genetic disorders, and then page 204 to 207 in the textbook. All right, that's what we're working on for the first block, for the entire block. I try to keep my intro here as short as possible because you're going to watch one of the lessons on a video. Before I send you off on your way to work on this stuff, are there any questions about any of the homework that you completed yesterday? So you were going through completing homework questions. Did anybody come across a homework question where they were like, I am not sure to solve this. I didn't get the answer that was listed in the text. I'm not 100% on how to solve blank. Throw it out there because I'm happy to actually do any of the homework problems together with you to take them up. Some of you guys came to the Learning Block 3 session yesterday, and I took up some questions with you, which is great. But anyway, you're welcome to ask. And you could always show up during today's Learning Block 3, and I could go over them with you as well. But keep in mind that there's a lineup sometimes. Sydney, while we're waiting, do you have an example of what a well? Sure. Give me a term. I'll write one with you right now. And Jalil, I will do that homework question. But Anastasia, give me an example. Give me a term, and let me write. I'll write one with you right now. This is great, by the way. I'll get all these questions. I like the chat because it keeps them all sort of lined up for me. Genotype. Okay. Genotype is a representation of the set of alleles that an organism possesses for a given gene. It is usually shown as a letter combination a two-letter combination where each letter represents an allele version of a gene. Analyzing the genotype of an organism can be used to predict the phenotype from that combination of alleles. And then you give an example, AA or TT. There, I would say that's a complete answer. Hopefully that's helpful. Okay, so what is it? What is it physically? It is a representation, that's what it is, of the set of alleles that an organism has for any given gene. It's shown as a two-letter combination where each letter represents an allele. That's how you would view a genotype. Okay? Analyzing the genotype of an organism, this is why it's important, is used to predict what the phenotype will be from any particular combination of alleles. That's the reason why we use genotypes, to predict phenotypes. And then I gave some examples. So I've explained what it is and how it functions, why it's important, and I gave examples if necessary. And depending on the term, you don't always need to include examples. And I should also mention that some of the terms will have a very obvious connection to the unit. For example, if you're defining biodiversity in the biodiversity unit, you probably don't need to explain how that's connected to biodiversity. It literally is biodiversity. So that's kind of unnecessary in that instance. And there are other terms like that it's like the connection's obvious. But here I'm connecting why the genotype is particularly important in this unit. Why is that a core piece of terminology? Well, we use it to predict phenotype. Was that helpful for you, Anastasia? That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a complete answer. And I will say that from the vocab list that I have evaluated, I haven't seen a lot of complete answers. So, not that no one is doing it, but not that many people are doing it. So, you're going to probably need to change what you're doing, I would assume, for a lot of people. Now, that being said, I always mark the first vocabulary list quite a bit easier than I mark the other ones, because I haven't provided you any feedback, and we haven't really even talked about in detail like how you can adjust or make them better. Not to mention, as we go through, each unit is worth technically the same, like from a mathematical perspective. But when I come up with your final mark for the course, and all teachers are supposed to do this, by the way, I always favor the most recent and most consistent marks. So if you start off and you're like a mid-80s student, but then as the course goes on, you are a mid-90s student, and some of the marks from the early in the course are really weighing you down. Why is this not connecting? That's annoying. And the marks are weighing you down from the beginning of the course. I usually modify them. I adjust them. And we're supposed to do that. Why did I get disconnected from my network? This stuff drives me nuts. There we go. Okay, let me get to some of these other questions. Can you use point form? Yes. Yes, they don't have to be full sentences. You can absolutely use point form. I've seen some excellent ones that were point form only, that just included all the relevant information, but just in point form. Of course, you don't need to write a novel. I did it. Maybe I was a little verby there. Like I added a lot of extra words, but you don't need to use full sentences. You just need to include the information. So yeah, sorry if I gave that impression. It doesn't need to be long-winded. It just needs to include that information. Okay. Where else Sydney, I'm going to answer your question here quickly. When you're trying to log into the textbook, are you going to mynelson.com? Just mynelson.com, not mynelson.com / blah, 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 blah. Like just mynelson.com, and then logging in to your account at mynelson.com. Many students that have trouble getting into the textbook, they bookmark the textbook itself, and then they try and go back to that bookmark, but that doesn't work. There's no way to do that. So once you are logged out from Nelson, if you try and just go to the link for the textbook, there's no way to get into it. It just shows that it's not working. You are doing that. Okay, so then the other thing you should try and doing is clearing your browser cache. So you clear your browser cache by, in your browser, you go to the settings. Oh, this is going to look completely different for you. This is what it looks like on an iPad. But you go to the settings. Hold on. I have the instructions for clearing the cache here somewhere. Let's see if I can paste this in here. Here we go. Okay, so that's how you clear the cache in your browser. I just posted it. This has worked for every single student issue I've ever had with students opening the textbook. So try that first, Sydney. If that doesn't work, if clearing your browser cache does not work, then let me know, and then we'll take a shot at trying something else. But I would definitely do that first. That appears to fix everything for most people. Okay. 196, number 5. Okay, let's do it. Let's add it onto here. Okay, 196, number 5. Thales. Oh, I answered this one in class yesterday. 196, number 5. Jaleel, we actually I did this one in class yesterday. This is this was actually in the lesson yesterday. So where would that be? Where was it? Right here. I'm pretty sure. Oh, okay. All right. So I'm going to skip over that one. If a heterozygous parent mates with another heterozygous parent, what are the chances their child will show the recessive trait? Okay, let's do that one. So I'm going to pick a heterozygote of something. Okay, it really doesn't matter. You could make let statements and you could explain this all, but I'm just going to pick this. Okay. That's a heterozygote, someone that has the dominant and the recessive, right? Okay, and I mate them with somebody who also has the dominant and recessive. That's another heterozygote. Okay, so both of these are going to show the dominant trait. I don't know what trait this is, but whatever the dominant is, it's going to show. So that would be the phenotypes of my parents, okay? Dominant by dominant. So I'm going to make my Punnett square. Okay, we've got big T, little t, big T, little t. And we're going to end up with big T, big T, big T, little t, big T, little t, little t, little t. So the question was, what are the chances their child will show the recessive trait? So the genotypic ratios here, I'm just going to write these out, are going to be 1 to 2 to 1 of big T to big T little t to little t little t. Is my phone making a bunch of noise? What's happening here? Baby awake. So those are the genotypic ratios, and then you have to think about what that actually means in terms of what's going to show. So the first two here, this one and this one, are both going to show dominant, right? Because they have the dominant allele. So in our phenotypic ratios, we're going to have the first two here are going to be dominant. So that's 3 of 4. So 3 out of 4 are going to be the dominant, and 1 out of 4, that's this one at the end, 1 out of 4 is going to show the recessive. Okay, so 3 dominant to 1 recessive. So, sorry, your original question was homozygous parent. What are the chances their child will show the recessive? So the chances are this. It's 1 in 4 total. So if you're looking for percentage chance, that's 1 in 4. 1 divided by 4 is a 0.25 chance, which is 25%. Did I answer your question for you, Kim? Oh, did I misspeak there? 0.25 or 25% recessive. That's right. Did I say dominant? I may have. Sorry if I misspoke. Let's see. Did I miss any other questions here? Okay, cool. And then, if you're performing a test cross and the individual you're testing is not a purebred, what is the likely product you'd see in the offspring? Okay, well, we'll do that as an example too. So let's say, remember that a test cross is when you're crossing it. I'm going to use T's again here, okay? So we've got a recessive individual. That's what you need to cross it with in a test cross, a homozygous recessive individual. And then you've got your mystery individual. This is the one that you're testing. And so what we actually know about its genotype is this, that it is at least one dominant, because it's showing dominant. But then the other one is a mystery. Now it's saying, what if that mystery letter was a little t? Okay? That is, it has the recessive allele. No, you don't need to show number 5, Brendan, because we did it together. I mentioned that yesterday. I crossed it out. You don't have to do number 5. So your question then, Kim, is this. If this is what you are testing, what are you likely to see in the offspring? Okay, so then you can just do the Punnett Square. So you're doing a Punnett Square with this, big T, little t. That's this right here. And then you're testing it with what you do in a test cross, which is to use the homozygous recessive. Okay, and then you get big T, little t, big T, little t, little t, little t, little t, little t. So what you're likely to see is 2 out of 4, or 50%, are going to show the dominant trait, and 50% are going to show the recessive trait. Sorry, Michaela, I didn't pick up on that, but I get that. So that's what happens when you get a heterozygote, a hybrid, when you're doing the test cross, is that you're going to see the recessive trait, this recessive trait right here in the offspring. If you're testing a purebred, you will never, ever see the recessive trait. And that means you got yourself a purebred. Any other questions from yesterday? Okay, I'm going to let you guys get to work. If anything pops up, please let me know. And again, I'm happy to answer them in the chat. But you're starting with the blood type questions stuff from yesterday, and then you're moving into the genetic disorder stuff. You can skip everything in between in your course notes. That stuff is in there as an ideal scenario. If we're ahead, there is some extra stuff we could talk about in genetics. We are not ahead. So, can I explain the nomenclature and superscripts? Yes, I can. So when you have a trait that is a simple dominant recessive, okay, complete dominance, that's what we talked about at the beginning, then you're going to use a capital letter for dominant, and then you're going to use a small letter or lowercase. Wait, lower has two W's? That looks wrong. One W. Lower? No, that looks wrong. I'm not 100% sure. That's kind of sad. Lowercase for recessive. Okay, that's the nomenclature here for complete dominance. If it's incomplete dominance, you're going to use a capital letter for a base letter, and then you're going to use another capital letter for the actual trait itself. Okay, so we've got both are capitals. Why did my pen stop working? What the heck? Oh, iPad. Always throwing a curveball at me. Every once in a while, my computer has a real freak out. What's going on? What's it doing now? Sorry, guys. Honestly, I've had months of flawless performance here, and all of a sudden, my iPad has just decided, nah, I'm not going to do that very well anymore. Why? Everything was working perfectly. Also, my security system in my house has gone absolutely haywire. The alarm's going off all the time. I can't figure out what's happening. It's been a crazy couple days. I got computer ghosts. All right. Here we go. So in incomplete dominance, we use a small capital letter. So these are both capitals. There's a base letter. That's this letter down here, and the base is for the gene. Okay, so you're saying, okay, this is for blood type gene, and then the other one, the letter up here is telling you the version. This is the allele, the specific allele. Okay, incomplete would have capital letters as superscripts. Yes, so incomplete has capitals for both. In codominance, and I should mention, by the way, that as I said yesterday, the textbook doesn't do this. For some reason, either the person who wrote the textbook or whatever didn't realize that there is a difference between these two, or that there's different nomenclature, but it's not done in the textbook, which is really annoying. But if this same trait here was codominant, you still have a capital letter here for the base, for the gene. So remember, this is the gene down here that it's describing. But then the actual trait, the allele, is lowercase. Okay, that's the difference between them. And when you do your blood types today, you'll notice that they kind of sort of follow this, but not really. What for blood types, it's always shown as little I represents O type. So that is, little I obviously means recessive, right? So just a small letter by itself means recessive. And then you've got your blood types A and B. those are codominant to each other. So it should be a capital letter with a small letter with a lowercase superscript, but they don't do that. They do blood type A, capital letter, and blood type B. So this is for A-type blood, and for B-type blood. And in blood types, these two here are codominant to each other. So technically, the superscripts here should be small letters, but they don't do that. But whatever, that's fine. I use the same script that they use in the textbook, just to keep things consistent. So I probably mentioned this in my note. Okay, hopefully that answered your question, Kim. This is what you're going to see now when you watch the note. We're going to talk about the nomenclature for blood types. So, okay, I'm going to let you guys get to work. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you next at 11:05. We can take up any questions, and then we're going to get to the project. Welcome back, guys. Let me know if you are here in the chat, if you have not already done so. Okay, so a couple things. If you're going back through preparing at any time for the quiz, please note that I moved a few of the practice quizzes. At the very beginning of the course, they were I had some that were over on the sidebar. I've moved those now to where you find all the other ones, which is just listed as the numbered steps for that day. It's like one of the last things for each section. I've also gone back and I've added in, oh, I just realized you guys can't see this. Give me 1 second. I've added in one for protein synthesis on day 6. So if you're interested, didn't I? Oh, gotta reload it maybe. Hold on. Yeah, there we go. There we go. If you don't see it, you just need to reload day 6. So there is now an EXA quiz for DNA transcription and translation, or protein synthesis. So if you're interested in doing a quick practice quiz, again, these don't count for marks, but this is just to help prepare you for the quiz. So I didn't previously have a quiz for protein synthesis, and I just made one. And I've also added one on day 7 near the top. So after meiosis continued, now there's one practice quiz for meiosis. So it's 9 questions, and again, doesn't count for marks, but just in preparation for your quiz, if you want to try it out, there are a number of questions about meiosis to help test your knowledge of the meiotic process. What is the number of, or the amount of genetic information at this spot? What is the phase of meiosis that's being shown here? You know, that kind of thing. Okay, so if you're interested in doing some practice quizzes for meiosis, I've added those in. I previously didn't have those, and it's a fairly complex topic, so it deserves a practice quiz. So there you go, that's available. I know I've already mentioned this, but you don't have to start the quiz at the beginning of Learning Block 3 if you don't feel like you're prepared. If you want to stop by during the Google Meet and ask questions about anything in preparation for the unit quiz, please do that first. So don't feel like you have to start it at the beginning just because it's available. So you can start it at any time, and it's due tomorrow at midnight. Please try and get it done before tomorrow at midnight. Okay, so you guys have been completing the blood types questions. There is a practice quiz for multiple alleles there, so again, it's available to you if you're interested. And then you would have completed the genetic disorders part, or at least you may be in the process of that still, which is totally fine. And there are some questions from the text that go along with the genetic disorders component. That one's a little bit more straightforward. So what we are doing now for the second half of the day is, well, I guess finishing anything that you didn't have a chance to complete during block 1. And there may be, I realize we've compressed an extra piece into that puzzle. So you may still be working on that, and that's totally fine. But this is also your time to work on your Meiosis Live assignment. So we've gone over the assignment expectations already. If you have any, does anybody have any questions about the assignment expectations for Meiosis Live? I did include a exemplar of a Meiosis Live from a previous quad. So that's an example of like a 4+ assignment, like an excellent one that shows everything that you need to show and describes everything that you need to describe about a particular species. So if you're curious, there's an excellent exemplar there. Okay, as usual, if anything pops up in the chat, I will address it when I see it. Okay, so that being said, Learning Block 3 here is a breakdown of what you need to submit during Learning Block 3. Keep in mind that your vocabulary list is now coming due at the end of the unit. You're going to work on the genetic processes quiz at some point, hopefully today, but tomorrow for sure. And don't forget about the midterm homework question portfolio. You're just handing in your homework questions that you would have already completed. So there's no need to go back and add anything or do anything to them. You just need one document per unit. You attach it to the homework questions portfolio and you submit. Do we need to choose a male or female for the species? Yes, you do. So you pick a male whatever. So if you're doing muntjac deer, this is the meiotic process in the male muntjac deer, which would be spermatogenesis. And you are specifically describing it for that one sex. It's not a gender, by the way, and no worries about that confusion. People mix up those terms all the time, but it's not a gender, it's a sex. So male sex mosquito, female sex mosquito, female sex muntjac deer, whatever. What it is specific to that sex. Does anybody have any questions about the blood type problems from the last block, if you've been working on the blood type problems? I realize that some people have not got to the problems yet or are in the midst of working on the problems, in which case, if you want to ask questions about it tomorrow at the beginning of class, that's totally fine. I can take them up then. I always have time at the beginning of class a little bit for that. Or if you want to drop by during Learning Block 3, I can do it during the Google Meet. But it usually is better for me to do it for the whole class. Most people have the same question if they're solving problems. You'd be very surprised if you're like, oh, I wasn't sure how you're supposed to show this, or I wasn't sure how to get this answer. It's usually like 10 people, but just nobody wants to say anything. So it's usually better if I do it on the stream. Any questions from the blood type stuff at all? Or I guess from the genetic illnesses stuff, it could be from there too. Nothing yet. Okay, please be aware that if you're looking for solutions for those problems, I do post the completed note set. So if you look at the top in the course notes section, these course notes are posted and there are solutions posted for those genetics problems. Sure. Is question 8 one of the ones, Zoe, that's on in the notes, or is from the text? I don't remember. Where is it here? Question 8. In the text, 196, number 8. Those ones I don't have posted. Okay, question number 8 says, suppose a father of blood type B. Okay, so we've got father is B type blood, and we've got a mother of O type. Okay, mother O type. These, by the way, are the symbols for male and female. This is just to help me keep it clear in my notes which one is which. So the father is B type and the mother is O type. They have a child of type O. Okay, it doesn't say the sex of the child, but what are possible blood types of the mother and father? Okay, so basically you have to look at what are all the possible options here. So these would be the phenotypes of the parents. We have B type blood and O type blood. Now technically you would include let statements at the beginning here. So for blood types, I is equal to O type. Blood type A is A type. And blood type B is B type. And then because it's multiple alleles, you also need to include what's called an order of dominance, which I would have mentioned in the note. So in this case, the order of dominance here would be BA is equal to BB, which is both greater than I. So that's the order of dominance. And that just helps you figure out what's going to show in each case. So if you have an A or a B, it overwrites I, but A and B are codominant, so they are going to be expressed together or simultaneously. Okay, so we've got B and O, and in terms of genotype, so this is the phenotype of the parents. In terms of genotype, we know that the mother has got to have little I, because little I is the only thing that can produce O type. So we know the mom. But B type can go two ways, right? You can have blood type B and then I, or you can have blood type B, blood type B. And both of those are going to make B type blood. Am I doing the notation the same way that they do it in the text? I hope that I am. Let me double check. I do know that there's spots where the text does it a little bit differently. Where's the blood type stuff in the text? Try and keep it consistent. Oh, they use I's. Okay. That's the difference. Sorry, my apologies. They use I's for this. That's fine. The I stands for immunoglobulin, or immunoglobulin. So IA and IB. That's fine. So, sorry if that confused anyone. I did that earlier when we were talking about it too. So it's immunoglobulin A and immunoglobulin B. I was not intentionally trying to confuse you here. I mean, that's just, it's arbitrary that what they're using, but I'm gonna, oops, this would be B. I'm gonna keep it consistent to what's in the textbook. I know nobody said anything, but but I'm assuming you want me to keep it the same. So so there we go. That's the correct nomenclature here for blood typing. So so B is going to be IB and little I, or IB would be the other B type. So the question is, which one of these can produce O-type child? Okay, so we want to know what produces O-type child, and remember that O-type child has to be little I. So you could just show both potential options. That's one way to do it. You may be looking at this right now and being like, well, it's obvious. The answer is obvious, or maybe not. So if not, then it would be a good idea to write out the options here. So the key here is we need to be able to produce little I. So we have either IB little I or IB. These are the two possibilities for the father, and the mother is going to be the same in each case because it's got to be O type. Is that a question, Brendan? Oh, are you saying that if you type it? There is a way, if you're using Google Docs, to do superscripts. Let me open up a Google Doc real quick, and I'll tell you the way. Control period. Thank you, Luca. So you just control period and then type your B, or sorry, you got to highlight your B or A or whatever it is, and then control period. Okay, I think it works on a Chromebook. It doesn't work on my Windows PC here, but I seem to remember control period working on a Chromebook. I'm fairly confident that it does. If not, please let me know. I will double check, but I'm fairly certain if you control period, it'll make it into a superscript. It's best to try and actually write it as a superscript, just so you don't confuse yourself, Brendan, because it is specific in the questions on the quiz. It's not. I don't want it to look unfamiliar, or for you not to be used to writing it that way. Where were we here? Right. So you're going to either get IB little I, IB little I, little I, little I, little I, little I, or IB little I, IB little I, IB little I. So you'll notice that only one of these actually allows you to produce O-type phenotype at the end. This one is going to be all the same. It's all going to be B-type. So that tells us what the other parent's genotype must be. It has to be this. It has to be IB little I. Otherwise, you couldn't make an O-type child. For question 8, since it says in the question that one of their children is blood type O, wouldn't both parents need to have an I? Correct. Yep. That's exactly what I'm saying, Anastasia. Both parents must have an I present somewhere in their own genotype in order to produce that child. All I've done here is shown the proof for that. It is required. Because if you don't have it, it's not going to work. And again, that'll be immediately obvious to some students that a parent must have a particular allele in order for that to be produced in the child. And some will require a proof. They'll need to require they'll require an analysis. And that's fine. Either way. Did that answer your question about number 8, Zoe? That's essentially what you show right there, if you want to prove it. Any other questions from the blood typing questions? Okay, cool. Okay, again, if I hear anything, I can always come back, but I want to give you guys as much time to work as possible. Please let me know if you're having questions as you go, and I'm happy to answer them. And you can always visit during Learning Block 3. I welcome your questions. And it's nice to see people sometimes, even if I don't see your video. So anyway, good luck, guys. Let me know what you need, all right?